So happy to welcome you all for today's session. So today we are just gonna look into the story of number pi. So I think you would have come across the number pi, right? So what this pi and how this pi exactly has been derived. Let's look into this. Okay, so before getting into it, you all know that whenever we see an object around us, it will fall under some shapes. Let it be a ball or a pen, your pencil box or your textbooks, anything for instance will fall in one or the other shapes like square, triangle, rectangle, etc. And many times we have come across objects that are circular in shape as well. Okay, so you can see an orange or a bubble or the coin or ball, clock, anything like for instance that are round with the no like corners or edges, we call them as circular objects, right? Okay, so before getting into the real story, you should understand three terms that are related to the circle. Number one is the circumference. The circumference is nothing but the boundary line of the circle. Okay, the boundary distance of the circle or the measurement, boundary measurement of the circle is nothing but the circumference. And when you draw a line from one edge of the circle to the other edge, that gives the diameter. That exact length from one edge of the circle to the other edge gives the diameter of the circle, and half of this diameter is nothing but the radius of the circle. So these are the three terms that we have to learn related to the circle. One, the circumference, which is nothing but the boundary, and the diameter, this is the length from one edge to the other edge, and the radius, that is the half of the diameter. So what exactly happened is people started to take so many circular objects, whatever they see, and they started to measure the circular object with the help of a thread or string, like how exactly it is shown here in the video. They just wrapped it around the circular object, marked it with something, and they started to measure how exactly the number or how exactly the measurement was. So based on this, then they also calculated, so this is this round like exactly the boundary which they are measuring is nothing but the circumference. Then they also calculated its diameter. Diameter is nothing but when it when we measure from one edge to the other edge of the circle. So they started to measure the diameter. So say for instance this is the diameter, and they started to measure the diameter as well. So when they are measuring the diameter as well as the circumference, okay, so this boundary also this diameter, when they calculate, they then they divided the both terms, that is the circumference and the diameter, and they arrived that for all the circles the diameter and the circumference ratio gave the value 3.14. So this become constant for almost all the circles. Then they understood that this, whenever you divide the circumference with the diameter, we get the constant value 3.14, which is nothing but this represents pi. Okay, so they understood that this is constant for all the circles. So let us just introduce the term pi to represent this particular number which is constant for all the circles. So this is how the number pi was like put forward by mathematicians. So where do we use this? So as I told you, they came to a conclusion like whenever you divide the circumference and diameter, you get the constant value pi. For example, if at all the circumference of the circle is 25.12 inches and the diameter of the circle is 8 inch, when you divide both, you get the answer 3.14. That is the constant value. So this is how they arrived at a formula that circumference is C and the diameter is D. When you divide both, you just get the constant value pi. So to find the circumference, they just started to use this formula pi d. And one more thing we learned that The radius is nothing but the half of the diameter. So let me just write the diameter as 2r, twice the radius, right? So this, instead of d, we started using 2r in the place of d. So this gave us the formula circumference C is equal to 2 pi r units. Why? Because it is easier to get the radius. Radius is the radius we can calculate easily from the midpoint of the circle. Say for instance, this is the midpoint of the circle, and to one edge of the circle, that is to one edge of the circle, from the midpoint to one edge of the circle will give you the radius r. So we can easily calculate the value r from here. This is how we can use radius easily instead of diameter. So that's the reason we got the circumference formula as 2 pi r. So why do we need this actually in our day-to-day life? Why are we supposed to find the circumference? So as I told you in the earlier video, it was easy to measure this. Yes, it was easy to measure the circumference of the glass tumbler which is round in shape. But when it comes to bigger areas, like bigger circular areas, like for example, if at all a cricket ground or a garden which is in circular shape, to find the circumference it will be very difficult, right? I cannot have a big thread like that to go around the entire garden, measure it with a thread, then big I have to take a big scale to measure exactly how much the circumference would be. So this is very difficult for me in my day to day life to calculate certain stuffs. That is the reason where the circumference formula comes in. Okay, so we already know that circumference is nothing but the measurement of the boundary of the circle. So when you just find the boundary of the circle, that is nothing but the circumference of that circle. So let us just take into another example. So one old man, he had a circular garden. Just imagine the circular garden was like this. So he want to fence this garden, all right? So in order to fence this garden, he should measure the boundary or the circumference of the circle. But he just what he did is, he know the formula of circumference. So just what he is doing is, he is just calculating the diameter. Diameter, it is from one edge like this. So the diameter is nothing but from one point, one edge of the garden to the other edge. When he measures, he will easily get the diameter, right? So what he is determining the diameter of his garden to be 21 meters. And he also calculated the cost to fence this garden, and it came around 55 rupees to fence 1 meter. Got it? So to fence 1 meter, it was around 55 rupees. So you have to help him to find how much exactly would cost to fence his entire circular garden. So this is our real time problem. So how can we solve this is, let's just understand what and all is given in the problem. The given point is the diameter of the garden, which is 21 meters, and the cost to fence per meter is rupees 55. So what we have to find is, we just have to find the cost to fence his circular garden. So there are two steps involved. Step one is, you have to find the circumference of the garden. Then we can just find the cost to determine like how exactly would have cost to fence his garden completely. This is step 2. Okay, to compute the cost to fence his garden. This is how we can calculate. So we know the formula of circumference, which is 2 pi r units. You know that they have given the diameter as 21. So you know its radius will be 21 by 2. Got it? Because half of the diameter is the radius. So we'll just have 21 by 2 as r, and the pi value is 22 by 7. You can either write 3.14. When you divide 22 by 7, you get 3.14. And also we can take for some calculations pi as 22 by 7 as well. Okay, so it is the fraction number which when you divide, you get the decimal number, that is 3.14. I hope this is clear. And then when we just compute the value, you can just cancel this 2 and 2 goes off, and 7 ones are and 7 threes are. So I have in my numerator 22 into 3, which is 66 meters. Okay, so cost for fencing per meter is rupees 55. So if I have to fence the entire garden, that is 66 meter, whose boundary or the perimeter is 66 meters, I just have to multiply this 55 and 66, which comes to around 3630 rupees. So this is how we can compute the like cost for him to fence his garden. So I hope you understood this concept. Let's just summarize it quickly. So the circular one, which is red in color, is the circumference, and this green line is the diameter, and this purple line is the radius. So we know the circumference formula is pi d, or you can write 2 pi r. Whenever diameter is given, we can use circumference as pi d, and when radius is given, you can use 2 pi r, or certain case you can just use diameter value by 2 as well. Okay, so just how we compute here in the garden example. All right, so I think this diagram gives you a clear picture how to exactly remember these three terms that are related to the circle: circumference, diameter, and radius. Oh, so you all came to know about the circular objects and the story of pi, how exactly mathematicians derived the value for pi, and also what is the circumference of the circle and where exactly we need to find the circumference of the circle, etc. So these are two stuffs you have to ponder upon. So one is, if you have a circular table, how much fabric that is required for you to cover its edge with some decorative borders, like that. Okay, you have to cover this circular table. So for example, you can consider any circular table that you have at home, and you just find the circumference of this, and so that you get to know how much like a border you want to buy, how many meter of border of cloth or something you want to buy to cover this. Got it. And also you have a running track where people just go in like marathon race, or some athletes 600-meter race or something like that. So what how much exactly the person has to go around to complete one lap? Okay, just try to find out this. So these are certain cases where we apply the circumference formula. So, good job, kiddos. I hope you enjoyed the session. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you all. Take care.